Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy. Checking out the Alaska Weather show times again. AKwx canceled, but they may be coming back. So you want to check your listings and their website as well here over the weekend into first of next week. Otherwise, 5:30 ARCS, 360 North, 7:30, and then Alaska Public Media, 5 a.m. Satellite imagery from yesterday showed a lot of clouds here associated with a developing storm back to the southwest, all heading right up into the southeast coast with heavy wind and rain. Moving into that area, we had clouds across southern Alaska here, back to about the Kuskokwim Valley with an upper level trough out there, clear to the north, clearing back to the west on down to the Alaska Peninsula, and out to the farther out to the west, there was a developing storm system here, kind of off the chart there, at the leading edge of the first band of clouds that was pushing up. Going to today, you can see that pushed right up in there across the Aleutians, and then a big infusion of moisture coming up this afternoon, right in across Adak and Atka there with the increasing winds and rain. Otherwise, big storm developed here off the southeast coast, pulled right up into this area, the center there, I think north of Sitka, in over the northern southeast coast. Those storm force winds here along the central coast today with gales just about everywhere else. Well, almost everywhere else. Not everywhere had gales, but winds anyway 25 to 35 miles an hour in the inside waters, gusts maybe 45 to 50, gusts above 60 miles per hour occurring along the central coast, particularly around Cape Decision, and a lot of heavy rain associated with that. On the chart, there's a low center over the northern panhandle, so winds are lighter here with less gradient. Still pretty gusty on down to the south. In fact, storm warnings are out through early this evening there along the coast, and along with that high wind warning there down toward Port Alexander on Cape Decision. Otherwise, just clouds back here along the North Gulf Coast into Prince William Sound. Higher pressure building back here to the west with the sunshine out there, increasing the winds. Northerlies gusting up to about 30 miles an hour this afternoon at Talkeetna, Susitna Valley areas. Also, winds kicked up today. Valdez, 30 to 40 miles per hour. Same thing at Whittier. Seward, also seeing that with decreasing clouds here. Temperatures warm into the mid-60s, and also pretty windy conditions with a lot of sunshine there for Kodiak Island. Mid-60s and sunny in over Bristol Bay. Lingering low cloud deck there from fog this morning, kind of hanging in around the greater Bethel area there. Are actually covering still a fair portion of the Kuskokwim Delta this afternoon, gradually diminishing, and areas of fog the Bering Strait up along the Arctic coast there. There were a few showers that dropped down earlier and moved mostly over the north slope, but amounts were quite light. Otherwise, just looking at quite an area of fog there from Barter Island, and it got a little heavier over toward Wainwright and Barrow. And here's the rain with this system here. You can see the gradient tightening today there across the central Aleutians, getting 40 to 50 mile wind gusts there at Atka Island and possibly Adak, with rain spreading to Nikiski, Nikolski, on back toward Amchitka Island. Basically just high pressure, cloudy skies over the central and northern Bering Sea. For tonight, we'll see that area expands right up to the Alaska Peninsula there, probably catching False Pass, maybe Cold Bay, probably Cold Bay escaping the rain till tomorrow, but definitely see an increase in the southeast winds there, especially for the eastern Aleutians. Rain heavy at times, gale warnings back across the central areas. Pretty strong northeast winds there. In fact, storm warnings out here from Adak over to roughly Amchitka, possibly Kiska. Northeast winds 50 knots for tonight, and then they fall back to about 45 tomorrow. And over the interior, clear skies. Could be some areas of low clouds and fog again tonight. Probably not as extensive here over the southwest as you saw this morning. And that system pushes off into Canada, along with the front, and left here the surface reflection of a pretty active upper level trough that's going to keep the rain and showers going here across the entire panhandle, but won't be as heavy, and definitely see a decrease in the winds here across the entire area. And then up to the north, very weak front dropping down from the Arctic, maybe bringing some areas of light rain or snow, drizzle, that sort of thing. Areas of fog, but whatever falls will be quite light. Again, areas of low clouds and fog from the Chukchi Sea southward into the northern Bering. For tomorrow, that trough here drops southeastward there, so showers tapering off here over the central southeast panhandle. Look for some clearing on up to the north there, maybe Hoona on into the Skagway, Juneau, Haines area. Sunshine for Yakutat, but showers hanging on over the southern southeast coast there, definitely throughout the day tomorrow afternoon. In fact, it may take most of Saturday night to shut those off completely. Otherwise, look for an increase in clouds up here over the northwest of Kobuk Valley on out to Kotzebue Sound there. Maybe a few showers developing, and this front kind of stalled out along the Brooks Range, maybe slipping a little bit to the south, but all the moisture will be stuck on the north side, and that will be light and possibly mixed. Otherwise, rain, gale force winds here. Southeast winds 35 knots, gusts to 50 miles an hour, especially Cold Bay, kind of the perfect wind setup for Cold Bay there. And rain spreading up the peninsula. Clouds, mid and high level clouds increasing Kodiak Island tomorrow afternoon. Even the wind starting to pick up there in the Pribilofs during the afternoon hours, with rain approaching St. George. Strong northeast winds, again 45 knots coming into the west central Aleutians, but lightening up out toward the western end there with high pressure. And moving on to Sunday. This whole system, kind of a separate low develops, pushes right up toward Kuskokwim Bay there in the front, pushed eastward, right to the Alaska Range, southward across Kodiak Island. A lot of rain coming in over southern Alaska, mostly south central Alaska and up the Alaska Range, with the heaviest amounts on the eastern slopes there. But rain right up across Norton Sound, reaching the southern Seward Peninsula. Showery conditions and less wind back behind, with high pressure here over the southeast coast. Look for sunny skies, definitely shower free, and variably cloudy though, with mostly sunny skies and light winds. But the high pressure here, the low pressure out toward Kuskokwim Bay, a lot of pretty good gradient along the North Gulf Coast there, especially from Cordova over to Anchorage. So that's going to produce some pretty strong south and southeast winds, especially through the mountain passes, channeled areas, Turnagain Arm, those locations, possibly gusting 50, maybe possibly as high as 60 miles per hour. Rain spreading northward. Otherwise, look for the clouds to increase tomorrow afternoon, or I'm sorry, Sunday afternoon across the Tanana Valley. Sunshine for the upper Yukon, back to the west. Very nice conditions there for the Selawik Valley up towards Red Dog and Noatak. And just some clouds along the Arctic coast with the usual patchy fog conditions, and winds pretty light up there. That front dissipated completely. Another one redeveloped, but kind of staying up to the north there, at least through Sunday afternoon. Otherwise, this whole area of moisture is going to move quite rapidly, and quite an area of rain is going to push in over the central interior Tanana Valley areas later Sunday night and into Monday. Looking at temperatures this afternoon, mid-afternoon temperatures, not the highs, lower 60s over the southern panhandle. It's 62 at Cape Decision. They had winds gusts over 60 miles per hour today, 57 at Sitka, 55 in Juneau, 52 Yakutat, Cordova up to 61. And with those north winds and increase in sunshine, both Valdez and Willow pushed up to 65. Valdez had more in the way of wind than Willow did. Talkeetna 64, 58 Gulkana, 55 at Northway, Fairbanks up to 57. Same thing at Seward, Kodiak 61. And farther to the north, there's Bettles with 52, 54 at Fort Yukon, upper 40s, lower 50s through the Brooks Range. Temperatures along the central and eastern Arctic coast right around 40 degrees, otherwise in the mid 40s there for the North Slope, and 50s for the northwest areas. Kivalina at 46, same thing at Ambler, also Nome at 46, but Wales up to 50. 52 at Koyuk, and Kaltag had 62 degrees, otherwise the southwest here in the 50s. Out to the Bering Sea, We'll see the Pribilofs, both St. George and St. Paul, lower 50s, upper 40s, lower 50s, central Aleutians, and the Alaska Peninsula, 50s, lower 60s, mid 60s there up toward northeast Bristol Bay, King Salmon, Dillingham, and those areas. For lows tonight here, coldest over the eastern interior, looking 25 to lower 30s, mid 20s or 20s to lower 30s through this area, warming into the lower to mid 30s back to the west, upper 30s to lower 40s down toward the southwest coast of the Seward Peninsula, and 45 to 50 for the Panhandle. Highs for tomorrow, nice warm temperatures there into the 60s for Bristol Bay. Susitna Valley, 65, 6, 7, maybe 8 there. Also for the Kenai Peninsula with nothing but sunshine here across the Copper River Basin. And again, most of the rain will be over the southern southeast coast, but temperatures upper 50s to near 60. Coolest north of the Brooks Range. Flying weather, IFR for the North Slope on out to the Arctic coast tomorrow morning with marginal VFR through the Bering Strait. Some of that, there could be some IFR mixed in here, but generally marginal conditions right down to Kuskokwim Bay. And then some IFR here over the southern Panhandle with marginal stuff all the way back up to the border, and that's going to be pulling off to the southeast throughout the day. And we've got IFR out here from Falls Pass all the way out to Amchitka Island there. And then for tomorrow afternoon, we'll start over the southeast coast. That disappears and it becomes VFR across the entire area there, although again, there'll be VFR showers hanging on here over the southern southeast coast, and then marginal VFR to IFR up along the North Slope, especially out toward the Arctic coast, VFR southwest coast, all through the Gulf of Alaska into the interior still. Areas of marginal VFR northern Bering Strait through this, or northern Bering Sea through the strait, and marginal VFR now spreading up the Alaska Peninsula with the IFR coming over to about Cold Bay westward, all the way out to the west, and look for the ceiling visibilities falling for the Pribilofs or Anatuvik. VFR, same thing for Adigan, Lake Clark and Merrill, another VFR day for one more day anyway, rainy, same forecast, windy VFR. Isabel, open tomorrow, Mentasta VFR, Antonita also VFR, Portage VFR, Chilcoot and White again, starting out marginal, becoming VFR, probably maybe by noon or before. Anyway, freezing levels here, again, that upper level trough pulling southeastward, so that's where the coldest air aloft is coming in tonight and tomorrow morning there. It's falling snowfall levels, and then about 6,000 feet over the central interior. At the surface here over the northeast part of the state, and actually that could come down a little farther to the south. No gradient out here over the Bering Sea at all, just about 6,000 to 8,000 feet. And for the icing, maybe above 2,000 feet here, North Slope and the Arctic coast, just areas of maybe some light rime icing, and then a more extensive area of rime icing here from the central Aleutians spreading across the Alaska Peninsula and heading northward towards St. Paul and St. George above about 8,000 feet. And for the jet stream, again, a pretty deep trough tomorrow here south of the Aleutians with that storm out there, southerlies 140 knots. That helped building a ridge up into the southwest there, and then northwest flow off the coast south of the Panhandle now, so drier conditions, those showers gradually pulling off to the southeast with the upper trough, and then westerly 60 to 90 knots there, lying parallel to that frontal boundary, so it's really not going to move much, and then dissipates Saturday night. 9,000 foot winds, high pressure right up through this area, so pretty light wind conditions, westerlies 15 to 20, maybe 25 knots through the central interior up to the Brooks Range and falling back again along the Arctic coast. Much lighter winds in store for the Panhandle tomorrow, both at the surface, 3,000 to 9,000 feet. Big increase in the winds coming into the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians. 30 to 55 knots here for the southern Bering and the entire Aleutian chain. And then for 3,000 feet, high pressure, light winds across southern Alaska. Westerlies 10 to 20 here through the central areas, maybe 25 knots eastern Brooks Range, lighter back toward the coast. And again, much lighter winds here for the Panhandle. The big winds out to the west, southeast 45 across the peninsula, northeast 55 in over the western and central Aleutians. Turbulence, of course, with those winds come the moderate chop there, below about 5,000 feet. Again, western Alaska Peninsula, probably roughly Nelson Lagoon across the Fox Islands, out to the west to Amchitka, and pretty smooth over the remainder of the state. So after the break of hangar flying, I'll be back with a look at the ice edge and the rain forecasts.
Good evening. I'm Harry Keeling, and on behalf of the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and Alaska Public Media, welcome to Hangar Flying. Tonight we welcome back Ralph Gibbs, who's the brand new Director of Aviation Technology at University of Alaska Anchorage. He's got an unbelievable background in flying, military flying, civilian flying, and aviation education. And it's nice to have him on the show, and it's nice to have him at the UAA campus leading that group of whom we're very proud. Ralph, welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
So let's talk about an idea that you have. First of all, start out with talking about the Colgan accident and what happened as a result of that.
So in 2009, there was an accident involving Colgan Air, which was a continental regional carrier. All souls on board were lost, and the result of that accident started with the families of the passengers and the folks on the ground that were also affected. The families went to Congress, and they were concerned about this accident, although it was initially reported as being caused by icing and autopilot use in icing, which in that type of model series and aircraft should not have occurred. Congress responded to the families by directing the FAA to make changes in the minimum hour requirements for Part 121 air carrier pilots. So the FAA mandated from that point going forward that all pilots would have to have an ATP. Previously, the captain had to have an airline transport pilot certificate, an ATP, which requires a minimum of 1,500 hours. However, the co-pilot, the first officer, could be hired into the right seat with a commercial certificate, which generally only takes 250 hours. By mandating that both pilots had to have 1,500 hours, it meant that the airlines had a more difficult time in finding pilots to fill the right seat. The airlines went to the FAA and said, we can't live with this. We're already parking airplanes due to a lack of pilots. And so the FAA came up with 3 tiers of restricted ATP. And with the restricted ATP, the airlines could hire that person into the right seat. The 3 tiers were military trained pilots could take their restricted ATP at 750 total hours instead of 1,500. Someone who went to a community college that had an aviation program approved by the FAA with 30 plus semester hours of aviation coursework could take their restricted ATP at 1,250. And if you went to a university program such as UAA, you could get your restricted ATP at 1,000 hours. And so we at UAA have that 1,000 hour restricted ATP. One of the things that, in listening to all the communications, the families hired a watchdog group to make sure that this restricted ATP was never rolled back. My thoughts, my suggestions to the regional carriers has been, why not suggest to the FAA that for any university graduate who attended a program that was based on a military-style flight training, such as we just discussed last week, that those graduates could be given the 750-hour restricted ATP. And by doing so, they would get pilots in the right seat that much faster, 750 hours faster. And so I think that that's one thing that we could do to mitigate the effect of the restricted ATP policy.
So what do you need to do? What can you do in your current position? I mean, is this something that needs congressional action or FAA prodding, or how do we, I mean, it's a great idea. How do we get it done?
Well, I believe that the regional carriers who are feeling the pain, so to speak, need to be pushing this with the FAA. The major carriers are getting their pilots from the regionals. So they're not feeling any pain. So it's the regionals who have the most to win or the most to lose, And I have been suggesting through articles and emails that perhaps they need to mount, I almost said an attack against the FAA, I didn't mean that, but they need to mount this initiative to get the 750-hour restricted ATP extended to the universities that are using a military-style form of academics.
You know, one of the things, Ralph, we didn't talk about, but you've got a aviation advisory group.
Yes.
And and I happen to be on that group, but there's a lot of people there that represent some of the regional carriers here in Alaska. Be a good place to roll your idea out and get their support at the ground level.
Absolutely.
Well, unfortunately, we've wrapped up 3 pretty interesting presentations and discussions, and I got to tell you that listening to you, I'm really honored to welcome you to the aviation community here in Alaska, and you're going to do a great job at the helm of UAA. Thanks for being on the program.
Thank you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed tonight's program. Until next time, fly safe.
Welcome back. On today's sea ice analysis, showing this heavier concentration area, the white area, which is about 7 to 10 tenths concentration, in a little closer to the coast than it was yesterday. And the forecast is for northeast winds, light northeast winds here through the weekend. And so the ice pack here, or whatever there is to it, will be kind of shifting south and southwest a little bit, saying that there's not going to be a whole lot of change in this through the weekend and into the first of next week. And for the winds for tomorrow, still holding on to the small craft advisories here on the south coast. Westerlies at about 25 knots, diminishing, becoming more northerly on up toward Yakutat. Lynn Canal south at 10, 15 for Stevens Passage. Clarence Strait southeast 20s, 4-foot seas. Outlook for Sunday, a lot lighter on the winds here, just barely a breeze now along the coast, mostly from the west at about 10. Seas coming down 6 to 8 feet, and southeast 10, pretty light there for Clarence Strait, 15. Northern Lynn Canal increasing to 20 knots with 4-foot seas. And for Prince William Sound, northwest 15 tomorrow, and becoming light and variable for northern Cook Inlet, northwest 10. South of the Forelands, 15 knots, Kamishak Bay through Shelikof Strait out of the west. And small craft advisories continuing here for the Barren Islands, but you can see winds coming down tomorrow from what they were this afternoon and overnight tonight, 15 to 20 out of the northwest for the North Gulf Coast. And then for Sunday, start to see the effects of that storm definitely coming in with the front approaching from the west. Gales here, east side of Kodiak Island and the Barrens turning easterly at 40 knots right into Kamishak Bay. Northeast 25 for southern Cook Inlet, and small craft advisories here for the North Gulf Coast, and even Prince William Sound, southeast 30 knots, seas building to 7 feet. And for Bristol Bay, southeast at about 15, but gales definitely here for the Alaska Peninsula, east-southeast 35 knots, 7 to 12-foot seas. And kind of an evolving wind condition here southwest of Kodiak Island, southwest becoming southeast late, but should stay under 20 knots. And then for Sunday, south 30 knots from Sitkinak to Castle Cape. Actually, small craft advisories all the way down to Cape Sarachef. Much lighter winds now on the north side of the peninsula, southeast 25 for Bristol Bay. Out in the Aleutians, north 30 there for the western areas, and full gales here for the central Aleutians, 35 to 45 knots, north-northeast, seas up to 18 feet, and southeast, east to southeast, 25 to 40 knots there for the Fox Islands and eastern Aleutian areas with seas 10 to 16 feet. Then for Sunday, those drop off, still pretty brisk here through the central Aleutians with 30 to 35 knots out of the north, dropping back to southwest 20 there for the far western Aleutians. Much lighter winds now here for the Fox Islands, east-southeast 15 to 20. And for the southwest coast, light variable winds tomorrow here sums it up for the entire area there. Back across the northern Bering Sea, southwest 15 for St. Lawrence Island, pretty light, northeast coming up to 25 knots to the Pribilof, and those seas building to 9 feet. And then for Sunday, north 25, that extends up toward St. Matthew Island, where it falls back a little bit there under small craft advisory levels. Small crafts here for the southwest coast, southeast here, south of Nunivak Island, and then northeast 25, but dropping back to 15 for St. Lawrence Island. Up along the Arctic coast, the entire coastline there showing northeast winds, 15 knots, up to 20 knots here in the west side. Then from Cape Beaufort on down toward the Bering Strait, light westerlies at about 10. And then for Sunday, northeast, 10 to 15 here in the west side. Northwest, central coast at 15 knots, and then winds pretty light and variable there all the way over to demarcation point for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And for tonight again, wind and rain diminishing, but rain definitely not ending, and showers here, but partly cutting off there at about Yakutat. Fair, kind of gusty winds, especially this evening here, south central Alaska. Again, the channeled areas, outflow winds, Prince William Sound, Seward, those areas, even Kodiak, but diminishing. Light winds, fair skies over the interior. Big storm here affecting the Aleutians, spreading in across the Fox Islands. Rain to the Alaska Peninsula. And then this very weak front up here to the north, really not doing much. Just cloudy skies, fog, drizzle, maybe some light snow mixed in, and generally just IFR kind of front up there, lingering through tomorrow. Maybe edging a little southward there, but everything is going to be trapped north of the Brooks Range. Some moisture may slip in there into the northwest valleys from the west. Otherwise, high pressure makes for a sunny day from the southern eastern Brooks Range, Fairbanks, Anchorage, North Gulf Coast, back out to the west. Even Kodiak pretty good. Showers hanging on to the southern panhandle. Gusty winds, rain heavy at times, Alaska Peninsula spreading toward the Pribilofs. And then the next day that all shifts up to the northeast here with wind and rain across south central Alaska. Heaviest here toward the eastern side of the western Alaska Range, but rain up to the Seward Peninsula. Sunshine, no rain for the Panhandle. Increasing clouds for the central interior, and this slides right on up Sunday night and Monday. Have a great week.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Support comes from the University of Alaska College Savings Plan, helping you and your child save for college every step of the way, from diapers to diploma. More information at uacollegesavings.com.